All right, so I'm walking along a creek bed in Rossville, just outside of Collierville, and I'm doing the next installment on my book of Daniel study. And if you read all the way to the end of chapter 1, you're going to read that about the four young men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and their first significant challenge as they try to remain faithful to God in the pagan culture where they're living. So the Babylonian government has drafted these young men and put them into a training program to help them become leaders within the Babylonian government. And one of the benefits, just stepped in some deep, deep mud. All right, well, okay, I'll be going home and washing these pants. I did not expect to sink 6 inches into the mud, but I did. I have my nice shoes that I bought in Norway that are waterproof, but when you sink down 6 inches underneath them or above them, they don't hold out so well. Sunk into a little bit of quicksand, I think, there. So anyway, Daniel and his three friends, the first challenge is that they're put at the table, at the banqueting table with other young people who are training to be leaders, and a lot of the food that is placed before them is non-kosher food. And the kosher food laws, especially for Christians that are Gentile Christians, is something that a lot of us don't understand, and sometimes we may even make fun of it. But one of the religious distinctives of the Jewish people, including Jewish Christians, is to keep the kosher food laws. God has set some dietary regulations for his Jewish people, and it maintains their identity. It's one of the identity markers of being Jewish. And it's interesting to me that a lot of people will make fun of the kosher food laws. In truth, they're not actually all that restrictive when you actually think about all the fad diets. In my lifetime, which is just about 51 years, I can think of dozens of fad diets. The Mediterranean diet, the keto diet, the Southwest diet, the South Beach diet, the apple and cinnamon diet, which was actually a thing. People are quite willing to make all kinds of sacrifices food-wise when it comes to their physical health, some which are ridiculous and some are which are really hard to live up to and live within. But if somebody makes food choices, dietary choices as a spiritual discipline, suddenly now it's treated as being ridiculous. So the book of Leviticus has some dietary restrictions for Jewish people, and it's a part of their identity. Now, the confusion is that we share the Old Testament with the Jewish people. We meaning Gentile Christians. There are Jewish Christians, and some feel compelled to continue to follow the kosher food laws, and some do not. But it's very clear from the book of Acts that the Gentile followers of Jesus are not required to follow the dietary laws in Leviticus. It doesn't mean that they're stupid or foolish, only that we're not required to follow them. Now, we may if we choose to, but Paul says that it's really not something Gentile Christians should spend much time worrying about. But as it relates to our story, the four young men are being asked to compromise their faith. Now, it's a very, very subtle compromise, yet it's one that strikes at the identity of who they are. And what they come up with is a way of trying to negotiate their way out of this. And so they say to one of their teachers, to one of the people that sit in the food beside them is, look, is there any way that it would be possible for us to just eat the vegetables that are served? Because nothing within our dietary restrictions says that we can't eat these vegetables, that we can't eat rice, that we can't eat the bread, so forth. It's only the meat that we have some restrictions around. It's only the dairy products around which we have restrictions around. And the master of the banquet is quite nervous because he's not the boss. And he's been told to fatten up and strengthen these young people. And he's quite worried that if these 4 Jewish boys only eat vegetables, they're going to start looking sickly. And then he's going to get in trouble. And so what the 4 young men do is that they say, listen, can we do it for a trial period? And if we start looking sickly, then look, then we'll eat what you set before us. But otherwise, if we still look good, if we still look healthy, would you allow us to keep following these dietary laws? And the master of the banquet says, okay, fine, suit yourself. And thankfully, at the end of the trial period, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel look very, very healthy and are allowed to continue to be faithful in this area without any more question. Now, what are we to learn from this? Well, it is not a promise, okay? Chapter 1 of Daniel is not a promise that if we stay faithful to God, everything's going to work out all right. I guess there was a real possibility that the young men could start becoming anemic and other kinds of things, right? From not having enough proteins or irons or whatever. And, we're very glad for them that it does work out. But we can probably imagine that many other Jewish people faced other kinds of circumstances where being faithful did not work out. They were, maybe things fell apart and they suffered as a result of trying to be faithful. What chapter 1 is trying to instruct us is that when we live in a pagan culture, when we live in a culture that does not withhold our faith, yes, we may get to some point at which we have to make a difficult stand, and it may end up costing us greatly. Later in the book of Daniel, we're going to see some examples of this, but that we should be, as Jesus says, as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves, and we should try to use wisdom and tact and negotiating skills and subtlety as we try to get on and live with our pagan bosses, our non-religious counterparts, our non-religious neighbors, that we shouldn't always be sporting for a fight, that we should try to use our heads, we should try to use negotiation, we should try to be diplomatic. That doesn't mean that at the end of the day we just compromise away our faith. Nor is it a promise that if we use our best wisdom and our best judgment that everything's going to go well. But it is how we should always set out to work through the differences we have with our pagan neighbors and our non-religious co-workers and bosses and so forth. That we should live in the words of 1 Peter, we should live quiet lives, giving respect and care to all the people around us so that hopefully we're able to live out our faith in peace. But we know both from the rest of the book of Daniel, from the history of the Jewish people and the history of Christian people, that is not always possible, and that doing the right thing may actually cost us. We have to trust God. We have to walk in faithfulness and leave the results to God, doing our best to negotiate the situation and navigate the situations as we face them. So that's what I think Daniel chapter 1 shows us. It just really teaches us to try to be very, very wise. Again, as wise as serpents, as innocent as doves, and recognizing that navigating these situations can be very, very difficult.